Tim, welcome to the How I Became podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you so much for joining.
Kelly,
Um,
thank you.
of course. I want to jump in and just talk about you for a second. And if you can share a little bit about who you are, your story, you have a lot going on your plate. So, kind of what you're working on and what's keeping you busy.
Hi, everyone. I am Tim. My name is Tim Johnson, and right now I am the head of brand partnerships at an amazing app that we'll talk about called Blossom Social. Previously to that, I was a startup founder of my own app, which was called Couply, which is the app for couples to help couples improve their relationship. And prior to that, I was an OG very early at an app called Wattpad, which was the app for readers and writers that grew to 100 million monthly active users and was acquired by the Korean super company Naver for $753 million. So I've been in the consumer app space for, I think, over 10 years now. And I'm very passionate about it. I love startups, love technology. I'm so excited to talk more about all of these things with you today.
It's funny about Wattpad because that has kind of been a theme of of my podcast. Because one of the first handful of guests I had on was Alan Lau, who I'm sure you know
Yeah.
is co-founder of Wattpad. And funny enough, my brother, he's a writer. When he started writing, he wrote on Wattpad as well, and he actually at the offices had a room named after him because he had a big book there. So it's just funny that I have this Wattpad not that I'm connected to Wattpad, but it's come in and out of my own life a lot, which is really funny. But I wanted to touch on that before we jump into where you are today and hear a bit about your experience of being at Wattpad, seeing that rapid growth, the acquisition, and how that impacted your decisions on continuing down the app road.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was the most incredible ride of my life. I think every person that works at a company, every founder wants to experience that rush of true product market fit. And I
Yeah.
feel so blessed to be experiencing that now at Blossom Social, which is the app for investors. But essentially, when I talk about that rush of product market fit, the only way to describe it is sort of like like being truly, the cliche one is being on a rocket ship, but I feel like it's more like a rocket ship powered by like fairy dust because it feels very magical and there's lots of things that happen that just happen a little bit quicker than you're expecting. You get access into different rooms and different people that aren't normal at perhaps the level of your career that you might be. And so at Wattpad, for anyone listening that hasn't heard of it, even though there's been a few episodes around it, it really got popular because it helps solve this huge problem. And here's the problem, right? There's one in 1,000 books get published. Your brother knows this. And which room was named after your brother, Kelly?
I don't know if it was Salt Spin was a room or Strange Yarns was the book
Strange
that he
Yarns.
wrote.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Strange Yarns. Yeah, no,
Funny, you know it.
I've had probably 100 meetings in that room. And so for authors, right? One in 1,000 books gets published. Just one in 1,000. And so for all these authors, there's all these people that have written all of these books and they've got nowhere to go. And often these books are amazing. Perhaps these books feature more diverse characters or different storylines, or they're more on the fan fiction side. And so there's all this talent out there, all these novels, and they had nowhere to go. Wattpad became the place where authors could share their stories and readers could find stories around anything. So that was the product. That was why it managed to tap into this really untapped market. And then as a company, I think there were two really big magical things that were happening at that company. One, Alan and Ivan, the founders, Alan just like had a very, very clear direction and a very clear vision of where to go. There wasn't too much like second guessing. It was just like, hey, we find great IP. We take that IP and furnish it to an audience. We sell it into movies and TV shows, which they did with several huge films coming out of Wattpad and TV shows now. My Life with the Walter Boys on Netflix, the After movies, there's a whole bunch. And they knew that their IP was valuable. And so we just need to help get that IP to people and we're going to get acquired for a lot of money.
Yeah.
So that's one part. The business part is like solved. We have a route to success. And then the culture part was amazing. Wattpad was a place where people felt at home. People loved being in the office. It was very normal in the early days of Wattpad for everyone to still be kind of hanging out until maybe 8 p.m. and working away in the office and just having an amazing time. So those were the two elements I'd say that made it really, really special. You worked hard, but you definitely had a lot of fun and played very hard. And the office really was that home for everyone to do so.
How did they encourage that type of environment without it being that if you're there at 8, you should be working? Because you're still in the office, so there might be this like, well, should I be at my desk or is it okay to like grab a
Oh
drink and
yeah,
hang out with some friends at the office?
yeah.
And you have to have like somehow create that environment that's okay. And I'm curious if you've thought about how they actually created that culture and not just that one specific element of it, but the whole, it feels like home environment.
Yeah, a big part of it was the way the office was set up and decorated. It was very like booked themed and like lots of couches. It was a brick and beam building, so really you did feel very comfortable there. While you had your desk and area, there was tons of places just to hang out. And then the second part was like it was very social. Like everyone was very, very good friends. There was a Scotch club that people used to go to. There was always dance parties, so people would go out and then come back to the office afterwards for a dance party. I'd say you're working with your friends, and it
Oh,
was a lot of fun. There was an annual boat party. There was, like it just was like very culturally, people were very good friends with one another. And I think when you're and it was very exciting, right? Because
yeah.
when you have a product that has such good product market fit, small things that you do can make a really big difference. And there's a lot of room. Like any startup knows, like if you can have an outsized impact on a really big community in a way that you'd never be able to otherwise. So it was really fun to come up with new ideas and things to do because they'd often be successful because the community
Right.
loved it. And it just and it was a very permissive environment. It wasn't too hierarchical. Alan used to sit next to one of the interns. Alan didn't have a crazy office. He just had a normal desk. He working in the kitchen. It wasn't very divided or divisive. It was really quite flat and a lot of fun. Yeah.
It's really special. And I was just listening to this podcast this morning. I don't know if you've listened to the All In podcast.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so I love it. And it's actually from Friday's episode, but I just got to it today. And they were talking about remote work and how
Mm,
we thought maybe there was a way that we could all work from home and it would be totally cool. And now I think it was Chamath saying that if he looks at his portfolio of investments, the companies that have been doing the well, doesn't matter industry, doesn't matter size, doesn't, but are the ones that have people working in office. And I think you're speaking to some of that like it's also you have this really strong connection with your colleague, so you don't want to let them down. You want to
mm.
work a little bit harder. You want to show up for work because you also know them on a more personal level. Um, but I'm curious if whether it was Couply or Blossom, if it's remote or in person, and if you're seeing any of those elements come through today, or how you're replicating that if it is more of a virtual setting.
Yeah, and with Blossom, our team is I'm in Toronto, the rest of the team's in Vancouver, and then more than half the team is in India too. So we're in a bunch of different locations. Blossom does a really special job of building the community amongst the founders and the staff. On the Canada side, pretty regular meetups. So get together in Vancouver. Had a spa day, and I know that the founders will do like games night. They go rock climbing, and then we've also, as we do events for our community, so we've just finished an incredible roadshow where Blossom did events in Toronto, Montreal, New York, Calgary, and Vancouver.
Right.
Had over 1,200 investors come out from across corner to corner, which was absolutely amazing to see. And we come together as a team for that. And then we have some other events later on in the year that we're coming together. So it's sort of like these periods of remote work punctuated by decent amount of in-person time. The founder spends a lot of time in Toronto, thank goodness, so I get to work.
You get FaceTime.
Yeah, I get it. Max and I have a great working relationship, and we get to work together a lot, which is really fun too.
That's awesome. I think there's the flip side of the benefit of remote work is that you get to tap into amazing talent anywhere in the
Mm,
world. Like if
mm,
you're in Toronto and you only get Toronto talent, which is like incredible in
mm.
itself, but just the idea of you can I remember when I was at Shopify, that was like a big pitch of the fact that we're going completely remote, is that you're not bound by physical boundaries, and it makes a really big difference. But it's interesting to hear kind of how Blossom is combating that and still creating a really incredible environment. I got sidetracked with all of this stuff because we jumped right into it, but I did want to get to know you a little bit. And you've talked about failing, but failing ahead. What do you mean by failing ahead?
Yeah, I mean, and this came from Kelly's question, which was like, what would you say have been like your keys to success? And I was like, I feel like I've just had, really, my life has just been like a series of me trying to do things and then endlessly sort of failing at them, but it's still kind of turning out okay. So my first half of my career, my first 10 years of my career were in the non-profit space. And I really wanted to get into tech. I was writing like your brother. I was an aspiring author, and I just wanted to work at, I wanted to work at Wattpad. Um, and, uh, and so I saw they had this job, which was director of brand partnerships. And I was like, wow, that'd be perfect for me. I'm in fundraising. It's very similar. And so I applied for it, didn't get it. But they were very kind and said, hey, like, you really don't have the experience that we're looking for. But like, we'll keep tabs. And as my career as a influencer on Wattpad, not took off, but I did okay. So let's talk about failures. All right. So 1, failed for my initial job. 2, as I was writing on Wattpad, I was gunning for the number 1 spot, but just couldn't get it. So I was like the number 2 fantasy action author. The person that got number 1, his name's Taran Matharu, right? And he is an awesome author. So I couldn't topple Taran from number 1. I was just like constantly number 2, which was very, very frustrating given I was
That's so
spending
frustrating.
and given I was spending like probably I probably spent 10,000. I like spent thousands and thousands of hours both on the book and the promotion and trying to become a big author on Wattpad. So I couldn't topple Taran. And then eventually Taran's book finished and I was number 1 for like a day. And then another book came up that had been coming up and crushed me. So I never really got to really experience that. Failure number 2, I'd say. So like did okay on Wattpad, but never hit
Yeah.
like the million read club. Got 850,000 reads, which is great.
It's
But it's not,
huge.
it technically for me it was a failure, right? And then as I then put out and try to publish this book, it didn't go anywhere. I got rejected. While Taran got the best agent in the UK, and his book, when it was published, became a number 1 New York Times seller along with the sequels. And we had a friendly, it wasn't really a rivalry because he was quite significantly ahead of me. We actually just became like really good friends. I was very happy for him. But at the same time, I was like, oh my gosh, this is somewhat painful. The other person that was in our little group of 3 writing group also got published. Her second book is now just become a TV show called Sanctuary on Amazon Prime. Let's go, Vic James. And so I was like, okay,
Wow.
I've technically kind of failed at writing.
Because of your surroundings, but for where you were on Wattpad.
It got me recognizable enough at
Yes.
Wattpad. Then I didn't
Yeah.
get the director of brand partnerships role, but they said, "Hey, listen, if you want to make a pivot into tech, we can give you like you can be a BDR, or if you guys are familiar with BDRs and SDRs, these are like the salespeople, cold calling, hardcore on the phones, crunching emails." And I thought, you know what? Yeah, I'm gonna do this.
Yeah.
So went into Wattpad and SDR and worked my way up to director of brand partnerships for US. Canada, UK, which was amazing. So that was incredible. And I'd say even as Wattpad got acquired, it wasn't always smooth sailing. So
Yeah.
we had got like diluted a little bit in some more flat rounds. It's still absolutely incredible, but compared to what I was expecting, Kelly, it was a little bit disappointing at the time. I'd done maths on numbers that were wrong. And so as Wattpad gets acquired, if anyone has never worked for a startup, you get stock options, which are amazing
Mhm.
if your startup sells. And so you see some really significant upside there. And so that was an element that wasn't like perhaps what I was expecting. With Couply, we didn't manage to quite scale it as we hoped as a startup. So all of my everything has been like these sort of like failures that have still led to good things, and I'm sort of brushing over Couply. But what Couply did, we tried to take this app for couples, which was a relationship improvement app, really scale it out into a big startup. While we had a lot of latent demand for it, we couldn't seem to scale that demand, or our ads wouldn't work, our marketing wasn't work, our burn was increasing, we were running out of runway, and so we put it as a side hustle. And now it's doing great, and it's still paying us, and we're going to pay back all our investors, and it's become like this amazing, amazing side hustle, amazing thing. But you could also look at it as a failure as well.
I like in the coupley example that the success at the time would have been for it to scale, but you
Mm.
reassessed and figured out what could success look like for coupley, and it's actually as a side hustle. So you went from it being a full-time gig to part-time and focusing on Blossom and um other areas, but you didn't completely, like, it's not gone. It still exists. It's still solving the problem that you set out to solve, just on a different scale than you had expected. So I love that. And I would love to chat about that experience of transitioning it from a part of your like full-time planning to scale this thing to shifting it to more of a part-time or like side hustle, what that looked like.
Yeah. And so for the folks listening, we built Couply. We raised a pre-seed round. We pitched it. We won the biggest tech conference in North America. We won like the Collision Best Pitch. We had a lot of really exciting momentum.
Yeah.
Um, as we continued, we had a few problems that we didn't seem to be able to think our way out of or figure out. One is that folks used, so Couply is a relationship improvement app. You do questions, quizzes, games, get date ideas with your partner, and it
Yeah.
works so amazingly well for that. If you have a problem in your relationship, you can download Couply, and it's, according to our survey, it's 97% going to help you guys, which is awesome. Here's the problem is for a consumer app, retention is really, really big. It's like the key thing that VCs want to see. You look at Netflix, 70% of people just never churn from Netflix. They just keep it forever. And our retention was very high. The reason for that is because actually, turns out people only want to work on their relationship until it gets better. It typically can take around like 6 to 8 weeks to really like improve things. And then they don't really want to carry on using your app for the rest of their lives. And so that was the problem that we saw, is that we couldn't really get over this retention issue, and then we couldn't really scale it up. So our ads weren't working, our marketing wasn't working, and I don't think I could figure it out in the time that we had left. So what did we do? We had a choice. Typically, startup founders will just kill the product. That's the normal done thing. But we were really like we discovered that there was a lot of latent desire for this product, and so we'd keep getting downloads. Even when we did zero marketing, we'd get organic downloads. People were still
Wow.
recommending Couply to their friends even when they hadn't used it for like a year. So we did have some elements that were really working, so we decided to keep it running. We kept a skeleton crew on, so we've got two social media coordinators who are posting reels and memes. And then we have one engineer who's on it for a few hours a week to keep everything updated and to put some new things in the product. And it's doing awesome. It's still doing so great. It's actually gone up a little bit, and we're making a little bit more than we just had our best month ever. And myself and my co-founder have only really worked on it for 30 minutes a month, which has been
Well,
amazing.
how we such a bizarre success story if you think of it.
Yeah, yeah. And the big win for me is that we're going to be able to pay back all our investors their money. So we gave our
Yeah.
investors a choice saying, hey, this is going to be a 10-year thing. We're still working on
Yeah.
translations. We can translate it into Spanish and French and all these different languages. But it's going to take a lot of time. So we gave them choice, said, hey, either you can get your money back or you can stay in for long term, knowing this is going to be a slightly longer time horizon. And so around half our investors stayed in, half them stayed wanted out. And so we can be able to pay them back in the next few months, probably around Christmas, which for me is
A
huge.
weight off your shoulder.
Yeah, whenever you take your friends and family round, it's different if it's from like a VC, but when it's from, your co-founder's best friend, your sister's boyfriend, you,
Yeah.
your friends from work, like you want to be able to at least give them that money back. So
Yeah.
I'm really excited that we can be able to do that. So that's been the story, and I guess the lesson was like, wow, it's so important to set up a structure and a system that allows things to run it by yourself. And it's possible to be a business owner and not need to work like a dog on the business every day. It's okay to own an asset and let other people run it to the best of their ability. And that's been amazing.
Do you ever feel like, seeing that you had your best month, do you ever have like, well, like maybe there is still something there? Do you ever feel like a pull back to it, or are you like pretty confident in the decision that you've made and how it's operating now?
You like it's hard to overestimate. For me, being a founder is very all encompassing, and not pushing a rock up a hill and trying to get it to go to that thing where it's going downhill and you're getting momentum, but
Hmm.
instead you're just endlessly pushing it uphill is completely mentally exhausting. And imagine like coming up with the best idea, thinking this is going to absolutely kill it, and then you get zero response from it. Doing that over and over again for years was my experience. And so
Right.
I'm thrilled to bits that it's doing fantastically now. I'm very excited. We'll launch language, like different languages, at the end of the year. We're just doing the architecture on the back there. I'm so excited to see how that does. I have zero desire to be pulled back in and trying to make it work full time at the
Full time.
moment, especially because I'm experiencing true product market fit with Blossom, and I know how big Blossom is going to become. So having a seat at that table, being on that ship that is like the wind at its sails, it's flying. The community are obsessed with it. We have so much momentum. There's so much exciting things happening around this Blossom app. I'm very, very, very happy to be on this rocket ship.
Really nice place to be in. Let's just go there. So I want to know about the journey from being a founder to
Yeah.
transitioning to the head of brand partnerships at Blossom, and um what has that looked like? What's your role now? What are you doing there? And kind of digging into that a little bit.
Yeah, and I think for any founders listening to this and sort of like having to not be a founder or not own your own product anymore, um, for me it's been fantastic. Like the first thing that I noticed was that I suddenly I could sleep again. I haven't really been able to sleep very well for like the last 3 years. I've always sort of like been thinking like, oh, why can't I figure this out? There must be a way to like make this thing pop. And then within a few weeks, even though we work a lot at Blossom, we work weekends, we work in the evening, I was sleeping like a baby. I was back to that magic of just putting my head on the pillow and closing my eyes and falling asleep. So there's something around having another person really lead and take a lot of like the small decisions, the big decisions. And Max does a fantastic job of that. So Maxwell Nicholson is Blossom CEO. He's super talented, really smart, very young guy. Has all of that energy that you need in a founder, and has a really like he's fantastic technically. So he's like really good at like design thinking, and as well as like projections. And then it also has a really good like really personable as well. And like it's not often you see that mixed in with someone that works like an absolute maniac. So
Yeah.
it's a really nice package to have in a CEO, and he does a wonderful job. um and I think like being a CEO as well is really amazing how much luxury of thought I have to just think more about the brand partnership side, um and helping support build like these really awesome brand campaigns we do. And for people that don't know, Blossom, social investing. So it's for retail investors like you and I, Kelly. We download Blossom, link it to our Quest Trade or Wealth Simple, and then we
Ah.
can see all about our portfolio. We can meet other retail and DIY investors, discuss like what's happening in the stock market, and get educated on the platform too. And so really is like, imagine LinkedIn, but the entire product is been created for retail and DIY investors, and it's the perfect place to be if you're into investing. Now, our clients are banks and ETFs. So ETFs, market on Blossom to help people know about their products. That's like the first way that we're doing it. We do this through like these learn and earn sort of like Duolingo style experiences. And so being now just part of the brand partnerships team, I have so much. I'm able to just focus on one smaller part of the business. I still feel like a business owner, but it's been awesome. It's been absolutely awesome.
It's really nice to know. I think a lot of people have this fantasy of what it's like to be an entrepreneur or a founder, and they want that title. But to your point, one, it's not necessarily for everyone. Like for
Mm-hmm.
myself, I think I started my own business, and it was such an interesting learning experience. We had a e-commerce apparel business, but it wasn't for me. And I do growth advising and I help startups, and I found my way to still be part of that ecosystem without being a founder myself. And it sounds like you kind of have a similar journey where maybe in the future, and I'll ask you that after, but maybe in the future you'll go back to it. But right now it's like you found your way to be part of a startup and in that environment and that culture and all of it without having to actually be the founder yourself of the business. But with that, do you, Couply as a business aside, do you miss founder elements? Do you see yourself being a founder again in the future? Because it's sometimes hard to let go, and it is a bit of a fantasy. Like there are really incredible elements of it. There's also really difficult components.
Yeah, there's two different types of founders. One type of founder is someone that wants to be a CEO. So you've got one type of founder that will quit their job because they want to start a company. They might not
Yep.
know what kind of company it is, but they know that they want to start a company. And then you have another founder that has an idea, and then they build a product to fix that idea. And that's me. I didn't really have a. In fact, I would say I probably never really wanted to like have like a really big company. I just had a really sweet idea and I wanted to see that idea become successful and get into as many
Yeah.
people's hands as possible. So if I look at, for example, the different founders that I meet, that those are the two kind of camps. So I was definitely in that product to problem to solution kind of founder. There's other founders that just want to be CEO. They just want to create companies, and the idea is like secondary. Whereas for me, the idea is primary, and then being the founder of it or the CEO is secondary. I think it depends on who you are. Hence why I'm completely comfortable not being the CEO. Absolutely love not being the CEO. It's great. Don't miss it at all. I would say like that's where I am. Whereas I think with other folks, any job would only be a stopgap until they can start the next company. And I see
Yeah.
that with my founder friends who they'll just start company after company after company, and then after 7 years they'll become an overnight success. This is what I've seen over and over again. It's like folks just like keep trying, fail, and then eventually hit something.
Something clicks.
Something clicks. But because I'm not that person that just wants to start a company on anything, that's
Yeah.
why that doesn't speak to me as much. I've got other ideas, so I'm definitely going to build more products. I've got other ideas for cool products that I want to try. So there'll definitely be more products for me in the future, more books, more writing, writing scripts and stuff. But yeah, that's my take on it.
I think it's even a theme of like you were writing and then you saw Wattpad as a really interesting company that supported you, and so then you were interested to work there. So that's kind of that, like that product interested you
Mm.
more than the job, I think, itself at the
Mm-hmm.
time. And same with Couply and now where you are at Blossom. Um, but I didn't want to lose sight, and I wanted to talk quickly about the passion side of the writing, and if you felt that if you still write, and that balance between like the working and having a job and being in the tech space versus
Yeah.
you clearly had a very strong passion for writing, and how you feel about balancing those two, and if that could be still part of your future.
When I was working at Couply, I made the decision not to write anymore, so no more fiction. And the reason for that is because both of them are very all encompassing, and
Hmm.
I just didn't think it was ethical to have taken a bunch of friends, family, and angel investors' money, and then also just to be having something on the side. So Couply was 100% the only thing that I did. With Blossom now, I think maybe in like a year I'll feel like a bit more comfortable. For now, I feel like we've got an incredible window to do some real damage in the area that we're in. So I want to put pedal to the metal, make the biggest impact that we can. And we've also we've still worked quite a lot of weekends and evenings. And so it's still very, very full on. But I think like as we get into a really good groove, I can see myself. I mean, I'm already
Dabbling a little
sleeping.
bit.
Yeah, I'm already sleeping. Like that's a great thing. Um,
Check sleep.
check sleep. And so as things go, I'll dabble a little bit. But I think I also think about it like this, Kelly, is if we can really take Blossom to the moon, then I'll after that acquisition, I think I'll have a whole lot more time to do writing. So yeah.
Maybe do more scenario hopefully it is beyond your expectation, but do the scenario plannings of like base case, high case, low case, so that
Yeah.
you're as excited about any of the outputs. But that is really exciting. So is that part of the plan of Blossom, is to exit in the next X amount of years? Is that kind of your hope, being part of the
I
company? Does it matter
I
to you?
I don't think I think what the company wants to do is make um a really strong, resilient company that makes a ton of cash, and that's the process that they'll do. I think if you
Yeah.
build a company with an eye on an exit, it's not the right way to do it. Companies are
No.
bought, not sold. Create the rocket ship, bring in a bunch of money, and good things will happen.
Oh, I really like that they're bought, not sold. I have had conversations and it sounds like um the founder is building to exit, and I'm always curious if we had some way to look at all the founders and take a survey of what's the goal. Is it to build the best product in the world? Is it to build the most user-friendly product in the world? Is it to exit and see where do you end up based on your early goals? Because I'm sure that there's a correlation of success, whatever that success might be, based on what your earliest
Mm,
goal is. Because
mm.
I imagine if you're going into it with the goal of exiting, how you build that product is probably going to be very different than if you're going into it to solve a true problem. What do
Yeah,
you?
and VCs look at this a lot, right? Because they're like, is this founder actually exitable, or is their entire identity wrapped in and around this product? So, like, will they
Yeah.
ever sell this, or is this? Can we just see this as like completely unattached from them? So, I think it's really healthy for a founder to, if you're looking to raise VC money, to be able to have your company as almost like a separate thing to you and understand that someone you make it so it can be acquirable versus like meshing it in with you so much that it feels like difficult to extract. Um, and then the second thing I think is I, I don't I don't yeah, maybe there are people that have managed to like flip companies, because I was going to say I'm not sure if you can go into it just like looking for a quick exit, so to speak. There are folks that have definitely managed to flip companies. I've seen people do things where they've like bought land, got the okay to put a wind farm on, and then sold the land with the okay for the wind farm, and just like
And that was the business.
yeah, that was their one and done, and now they're retired. So you've seen some things. I've seen some things happen like that. Um, but I think like with building a really good product, you can also get to the point where you're making a lot of money. If you have a really big Series A, the founders can take some cash off the table and be kind of set up. And it's like, how much money do you really need to be set up, right? Maybe if you've got your house paid off and then you've got a bunch of cash in the bank, all of a sudden you don't really want to sell. You want to see how big we can make this thing, because there's no financial pressure and you're just doing it for fun and to just go as hard as you can. So
Yeah.
I think it just depends on it depends on the rounds, it depends on the founders, it depends on a lot of things.
Has Blossom been continually raising, and what has that experience been for you?
They've just raised Blossom just raised $2.5 million.
Congrats.
It was the fastest. Thank you. It was the fastest Canadian crowdfunding round. So $1 million of that came from the Blossom community, which is insane. It's absolutely
Wow.
wild. And they did that in just a few days. They're expecting it to take 3 months. So that big Blossom tour, initially they were thinking, oh, this will be perfect for us to speak to all of the community and kind of do a bit of fundraising on it as well. No, there was an absolutely massive
That's
appetite.
insane.
Yeah, and that's when I talk about product market fit. And I feel like that's a very glib way of saying it, but really you have like an absolutely fanatic community that completely love your product, that are driving hours to come and meet other people that use the app, that are seeing life-changing things happen on the app. We've got people saving up $1 million at the ages of 32 and retiring. We've got 21-year-olds saving up their first 100K from doing side hustles and building people websites and then making content. And it's very inspiring inspiring community and very inspiring place to be for people. And so it sounds like small me saying like, oh, it has product market fit, but the actual like existing and being part of it's massive. And so that's why they were able to raise that cash really fast. And it puts them in a really strong position, because if they need to, they can go back to the community. But I know that Blossom has a lot of goals they want to hit before they gun for Series A. So yeah, it's still in its infancy, seed stage company, still very early,
Yeah.
but with all of the right signals.
And it seems, I mean, I've followed a little bit. It seems like you
Yeah.
guys have had a lot of success with a really tiny team. So I think
Yeah.
the last we connected, it was a team of 4 with
Yeah.
with additional team. What
With
remind
11,
me what
with
this is
11, yeah,
in
it's a team.
India?
It's a team of 5 in Canada and 11
Yeah.
in India now. Yeah, so Blossom has an incredible CTO. His name is Kartik, absolute weapon, and he is Indian and able to just just such a talented CTO, and is able to obviously run the team in India really well. So that's how sort of the app has been able to push out iteration after iteration almost weekly, and so many features. Like the pace of development for the product is absolute breakneck. And so having a larger team in India who's are so talented has really helped do that.
How has the iterations been decided on? Like, is it consumer led that this is what they're asking for? Do you see the uptake of the new features as fast as the features are being pumped out?
Yeah,
Because it's hard for
yeah,
consumers to adapt.
yeah, it is. But when you have like a really uh intense, not I'd say intense consumer base that are asking a lot for features,
Yeah.
then it makes the roadmap a little bit more simple. And I think like because Blossom's a social platform, the founders are really right in there in the community. Max will throw a poll up. Hey guys, out of the 4 features we've got on, who wants what first? So as a consumer, as a user of the app, you get to speak to the founder, you get to vote in the polls, you get to really help shape the direction that the product is going. And they've got a really solid roadmap, a ton of really cool stuff coming out, and that's that having that direct consumer conversations is really powerful as a startup.
Has there been like pivots within the company or iterations to ensure that you're continuing um to move in the right direction? Because it's okay, we pumped this feature out, maybe we need to scale it back
Yeah.
or twist it. So what, and whether it's on a feature side or business in itself,
Hmm.
curious about some of the pivots that
Yeah.
have occurred.
The moment when I knew that this company was going to be really special was when their plan was to become a brokerage, right? So Blossom was a social community of investors with plans originally to become a brokerage. But Max, being very data driven, complete data nerd, was doing the projections. And to make some money, they started doing some brand partnership stuff. And then as he was looking at the amount of revenue per user, he was thinking, wait a second, there's a whole separate space for us here. We've got the
Hmm.
Wealth Simples. We've got Questrade. We've got Webull coming in. Moo. Blossom can sit on top of these as a layer that plugs in to everything. So for Kelly, if you're investing on Wealthsimple and I'm on Questrade, there's no platform for us to talk about stuff. But on
Right.
Blossom, we can become friends. My portfolio is shared, so you can see what I'm investing in. Your portfolio is shared, so I can see what you're investing in, and it plugs into all of these different players. And so it then becomes this layer
Hmm.
on top, this big social layer, all backed up by people's brokerages, and becomes an incredible place for conversations, and then an incredible place for also brands to reach this community with their message. Because it's highly regulated area, there aren't very many places that they can do that. And Blossom becomes the perfect place to do that. This is the perfect time for it because
Yeah.
millennials like me and you are starting to take control of our money. We've looked at the books, we've looked at the math, we've seen what these 2% management fees do to us. It takes 10 years off our time of retirement. If we're not managing it ourselves, you're losing 10 years. You could retire 10 years earlier managing your money yourself than putting it in a mutual fund. That is wild. Frankly, it's a little bit disgusting that we've been
Yeah.
tricked into this. It's sickening. It genuinely is sickening. Um,
Yeah.
and so because of that, we have this amazing um, there's this huge wealth transfer happening where we're starting to take control and manage our finances ourselves. So Blossom sits between those two things, which makes it a very exciting place to be, and why this time is why I'm, as you can probably tell, we've got a window here to really smash it. Um,
Why?
yeah.
What is that window? Like, why now? Why is? Because you mentioned a few times that right now you want to like everything else is on the back burner because it's all in right now. What makes now special?
We right now we have this huge the largest transfer of wealth ever, with boomers passing their money down to millennials and slowly dying off, and us and Gen X coming into like our big wealth earning periods. And because we're going to be managing our money differently, there's going to be different systems set up. There's different products. As consumers and investors, we're taking back like so much power, um, and we're going to see ourselves be able to hit our financial goals so much sooner. But we've got work to do here. We've got to get this message out, and help bring more people onto the journey. But it's happening. It's really happening in like a very major way. And I think if other places haven't woken up to it yet, in a few years they're going to be in for an absolute shock.
It's so fascinating because there's so much about everyone feeling like every single doll, and there's a range of financial stability and where people are at, but I feel like a lot of the conversation is on affording groceries, getting my
Hmm.
avocado,
Hmm.
making every dollar count. But I think it's really important for us to also think about, yes, of course, like we have to live life right now, but also considering how does our any amount of savings that you're putting in today impact you down the road? Because I didn't know that I never like connected the dots on the 2% impacting me down the line and how that's going to drive my future. But it's so important to consider that, and being part of an app or a tool like Blossom where I can learn some of those insights to prepare myself, start preparing now for down the road. So really exciting. I get it. I get it.
This is such an important conversation. Look, I really want to say this as well, is that I mean, I have just started to get into this properly. The first time I learned about the importance of managing your finances was when I was at Wattpad, and our lawyer, she was early 40s, had just announced that she was retiring. She's like, "Hey guys, I've saved up enough money to retire." Wow. And then she did a little AMA and a session on how she managed to do it. Now, at, I have gone back and looked at some of my finances. So I made some finance moves back then, but honestly, when I was working at Couply, I was getting so low paid that I didn't really check into it that much at all.
Right.
Now I'm at Blossom. I'm in the community. This weekend I was just doing some looking into like my RRSP. So I had one that Wattpad matched, and I kind of left it alone. And because it's been 5 years, I've got to see that through the money that I manage myself. And when I say manage myself, I really just bought a simple S&P 500 ETF over the 5 years. That has gone up. I think it's something like 93%. And then the money my RSP had gone up an average of like 6% per year with a 2% management fee. And it was costing me thousands and thousands to leave it there. And it was
Yeah.
just, all it needed was like an hour of focus to me to like find the forms and do it on Questrade and request to transfer it in under my management. But if I'd have done that 5 years ago, I would have probably have had an extra like $30,000 or doubled it in that time. Whereas instead, it cost me so much to leave it there. So I'm figuring this out right now. I'm doing this work right now, and I hope that everyone else can as well.
What are like you're getting into Blossom? I'm sure it's been information overload for you. So if you were to pass on information to myself or someone who maybe hasn't given it the time of day that it needs,
Yeah,
what are where should someone start? Is it downloading the Blossom app, or you know what I mean? Like how do you even start thinking about it? Because it's very
exactly.
overwhelming.
It's completely overwhelming, and it's actually been specifically designed to be overwhelming, right? It's supposed like the financial system is created to be confusing because where there's mystery, there's margin, right? So they want you to be
Yeah.
confused. That it's not you, it's them. And yes, on Blossom they have an education portal. Brandon Beavis, if anyone is like remotely familiar with finance, they'll know Brandon Beavis. He's a huge Canadian YouTuber, a true OG. He teaches the Blossom investing education portal in the app, along with Joy Yang and Shay. They've got some other big names there of creators. So yeah, Blossom has an education portal that will literally walk you through this because it's the most common thing. The other thing is you can check out some great creators as well. Check out creators like Joy Yang, Adrian, Canadian Atisha, Adrian Barr, and then Brandon Beavis as well, if you want to look at some videos, and they'll answer a lot of the standard questions. And then finally, of course, like join the community on Blossom, but I think it's so worthwhile doing a little bit of education first.
Totally. Okay, great feedback. If there was a myth you were told when you were starting Couply, or even just in the tech world in general, a myth that you heard that now, you know, you've been in the game for a while, what would you dispel for individuals getting into entrepreneurship?
I think the myth that I'd really like to dispel is this idea of gut feeling. Just because you think it's true.
Yeah.
It it is supposed to be hard, right? It's supposed to be hard, but at some point your idea might be the wrong idea, and that's completely okay. I think test an idea against the market, but just because you in your gut feel like it's supposed to be true, um, like test it, and it's okay if it doesn't work out. I've just seen too many founders basically destroy their lives because they've had an idea and they've been told like, you keep pushing it, sell the house, sell the car, move into your mum's basement, and
Right.
keep going, and then it doesn't work, and then they've really have lost out really significantly. I'm not saying not build it. I'm saying build it, test it, even build it as a side hustle at the beginning, test it against the market, see what comes back. But if that feedback is consistently negative from the market and it's not working, it's okay. You're not a bad person. You're not even a bad founder. It's okay. I think that's the myth that I want to dispel.
I think it's sometimes hard to hear that, but it's probably the right thing, and hard to make those decisions when you've kind of gone all into something. Um but sometimes it's about putting the ego aside, which I think is the point there. And then lastly, more on less about founders themselves, but you. The podcast is called How I Became, and we talked a lot about your journey and shifts and pivots that you've made throughout your career. If you were to think about Tim now and how Tim became ... how would you fill in the blank of that episode?
How I became. What would you name your? Okay. Um, I think it would be how I how I failed ahead. I think that would be one, or something around love and money, because I guess my last few years have been around love and money. So something around that I think would be really good.
I love that. Amazing episode. Tim, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your journey. I can't wait to get this podcast out. I think there's so many nuggets of insights and learnings. I hope everyone goes and downloads the app. I know I'm going to immediately after this. And it was such a pleasure chatting.
It was such a pleasure. Kelly, thank you so much, everyone. Really appreciate you listening. You can find me on LinkedIn, or I'm Tiger Tim on Blossom as well. So feel free to hit me up there too.